My marriage story. Married 18 very happy years. 2 kids. I ran a large business from home and also was the primary caregiver to our 2 boys. She traveled as a consultant. I knew something happened 14 years ago. Just wasn't sure what. Asked her, denied it. Many other times over the years. Asked her, denied anything happened. Best marriage, I thought, and no way, could not happen to us. Fast forward to last week. Asked her again but bluffed and said I know it happened. Don't know why, but last week something triggered the memory and I just knew. For the first time, I just knew ... like a woman's intuition. She confessed, but all it was consisted of a drive home from the bar outing that the work gang of hers had been on that Friday evening. And in his car before coming home. Said she was too tipsy to drive, but I know from other facts that the plan was to drive home with him anyway. She had been flirting with him at her work for a while. She said she never spoke with him again outside work. So, I read up on all of this, and the stats state that only 17% of those who strayed and didn't admit it strayed only once. Most, the other 83%, strayed 3-5 times. So ... told her I know that you are in the 83%. Tell me. She said a year or so later she kissed a guy in the hotel hallway who had been at a company function. A client, at that hotel, and that was all that happened there. Also said that she later accepted internet porn short stories from a guy she met at another annual company event and that he would send these stories and she would write back with her impressions of them. Strange, I know. She swears that this is all that has happened. Our marriage had never been better when she admitted these things last week and we have lots of very good bedtime together currently. It just changed how I perceived myself and my life. I had no idea. I have had multiple opportunities to stray and never have. She said it was just the excitement, that none meant anything to her. It was just the physical attraction. Back then, we had small kids and we were an average type of couple romantically speaking. She was quite an emotional during the time she had the flings, 4 to 6 years into the marriage. The period where partners get restless. Bored with the sameness of things. In terms of not showing much affection. I always showed affection and just chalked it up to postpartum depression. She had suggested this. Or the rut of busy parents, or a low libido of hers. I took care of our kids and her mother in our house for 2 years. She died of breast cancer. While she did these things, everyone who knows us or knew us would have said we were the best couple. Always happy. We were, and she is a good person. I wanted to know that one person in this world loved only me. I know that's old-fashioned and sappy, but I waited till 35 to marry. Because I wanted one true love. I'm too old, 53, to start over and I don't really want to. But I wish I could end my life knowing whoever I am married to was faithful to me. As you might guess, I'm having a really hard time blocking it out. I cried to myself the other day, the first time in 10 years, since my brother was killed in an accident, that I have cried. I don't know if I have ever cried other than those 2 times in my life. If that you give you any indication of what I'm going through. I forgave her and made her feel better. I didn't want her to hurt and I was grateful she confessed to all, if that is all. Still, inside, I just don't know how to make my hurt go away. 2 weeks into this and it still rips me apart. Can anybody help? Any good data on outcomes in one-night stand flings like this? Just really hurting. I've put myself in dangerous, hard, tough situations, requiring huge amounts of mental and physical fortitude. But this is a tough one for me. Thanks people. Comments. See how you got more out of her. First it was nothing. Still nothing. Nothing. Finally, here's a piece, but that's it. Then you pry, here's another piece, but that's all, I swear. It's called trickle truth, and it's always the tip of the iceberg of lies. Your wife is not the person you thought she was, she's a liar, and you can't trust what she says. In all likelihood, you may never have the whole truth. You are too eager to forgive her, and too concerned about hurting her feelings. Get rid of that notion. You are the one hurting, and she is the one who has hurt you. You need to tell her that you don't believe her. You're sick of living a lie. And if she doesn't come out with full details, you're filing for divorce? Be prepared to end it if you really want to save it. Once you get more info, tell her you want her to write out a timeline of when it all happened. Then, once you have the timeline, tell her to get in the car because you're going somewhere. But don't tell her where. Pull into the parking lot of a lawyer's firm and park the car. Then look her in the eye and tell her that you have booked a polygraph. Even if you haven't, and that you are going inside with her to see if she passes. And if she fails, it's over. Ask her one more time, if there's anything she wants to tell you before you proceed. Be prepared for the waterworks and more of a confession. There is nothing mild about your story. Infidelity in all of its forms is extremely traumatic. Your wife sounds like a serial cheater, and there is no doubt that you have only got the tip of the iceberg. How old are your children? Wife needs serious individual counseling, and you need to understand the pain and suffering involved in reconciliation. If you decide to go that route, Most around here say it takes 3 to 5 years to heal from infidelity. So 2 weeks is nothing for you and your healing. I'd start checking legal options, maybe get some IC of your own and start protecting your assets. This is not going to be easy, and you may not be able to actually reconcile. Many betrayed spouses have the knee-jerk reaction of instant forgiveness, having no idea the emotional trauma that they have suffered. That trauma will continue to reveal itself to you in coming weeks and months. Eat right, exercise, make yourself and your mental, physical well-being your top priority. Good luck and sorry that you are here. OP responds, my fear of the polygraph is this... If she is telling the truth, I will have then hurt and humiliated her, hooking her up to a machine. I know it's practical, but that would make her resent me for the rest of the marriage. If she is telling the truth, I know she is the one who started the ball rolling down that hill. So you could argue she deserves it, but it just seems like such a move that would alienate her from me. Has anyone on this thread actually ever done one on a spouse? I suppose just asking if she would agree to one would probably tell me what I need to know. Kids are 15 and almost 11. Again, I am still the primary caregiver. I have homeschooled, tutored them, and ran my business from home, which is now quite a large operation. So our contributions to our income have been similar. WS works just 50%, and when she works, travel is 100% of the time. So she is always gone when she works. Can't there be any chance that what she is saying is true? Is there anyone on here who had a wife who strayed 2 or 3 times but actually never went past the kissing level? I know you all are saying I'm in denial, and I know the characteristic of that is to not know you are in it. Catch 22. It would be nice if there was someone on here who had that experience. But, I hear you, and manning up is turning down the women who have come on to me over the years. Used to be a tennis pro. Comes with the job. Right now, I'm just looking for good advice, and I take your point regarding the polygraph. She still could have lied again 2 weeks ago and said nothing happened, like she did before. She didn't have to say anything. Our marriage was doing great. Please no chuckling on that point. I do get the irony. And she admitted it with nothing to gain from it. Now, she didn't admit the other 2 instances, but a couple days later, when I showed her the stats, she gave up that info. She didn't have to do that. She could have just said that she was one of the 17% that only cheated once. I would have never found out... So that makes me believe her. Doesn't that follow at all? Doesn't that at least make some sense, people? Preparing for the avalanche of comments as to my naivety. Which maybe I am. I'm more and more leaning towards the polygraph. Just not all the way there. I'll post back after a while if something has changed, and thanks again to so many of you... all of you. Because no matter your take on this, harsh or not, your comments come from experience. And from just trying to help. For that, I'm grateful to all. Update. Travels to different companies as a consultant. Goes back to the same client for a period of time, then that gig is over. And on to the next week of work somewhere else. Up until 2 years ago... and oh... she never approached me for sex. I always had to initiate. Have not looked at her phone or computer. This is all very new. I bluffed her by saying I saw some things on a chat room of a company she worked for. Which is actually the truth. That's how I first became suspicious. She had been taking a few Friday evenings to have beers with the gang where she was working instead of coming home. At that time, she worked for a regular company. Regular job, no travel. Kid was 1 year old at that time and I took care of him while working from home. A posting on a company stock chat board referred to Footsie with her initials and another bigwig. That same evening, she did not drive home from the bar. Said she was too tipsy and got a ride home. I went to bed about 1 a.m. that night, when she wasn't back yet. I asked her about the internet posting and she said the union guys do that to discredit management. I had always wondered, suspicious, didn't want to know. I just didn't want to lose my new son. I guess. So, fast forward to 2 weeks ago, I bluffed and told her there was more on the chat room that I didn't show her. And she then told me about time number 1, said they drove home, since she was too tipsy, and stopped at a golf course and made out. I then did research, that's just my approach, and got the data about only 17% of spouses who are unfaithful and didn't tell were unfaithful just once. So, I showed her the data and she told me of the hallway kissing in the hotel and the internet dirty stories. I didn't want to really get into details here, but I suppose it may help with what you decide. This being just 2 years ago... she lost a bit of weight, but she was always in very good shape. Got in better shape and said that revved up her drive. Which is something that does happen. Bought more naughty clothes. Had a bit of cosmetic surgery after that. She is very pretty, 5'4", 110 to 115, mid-40s, smart. A 9 on most people's scale, I would say. Back then, 12 to 14 years ago when this happened, she was more like a 7. So, she actually is better looking now than then, and her attention has been with me much more as a 9 than when she was a 7. So if that helps at all. There it is. She has no BFF. No gals night outs. I take from all I have read here that I need to determine if she is telling the truth through a poly, regardless of how uncomfortable that makes us both feel while it happens. And regardless as to the error rate of those tests. Kids are 10 and 15. My wife and I get along great ... except for me right now trying to make sense of this. Update. I saw a counselor today. A good one. Seen it all. Her PhD and experience practicing made her conclude the same things other people are telling me ... that there is more. Possibly much more. She didn't like the poly. It's true about the inaccuracy of polys, but she did suggest that my wife see her and confess all. If there is more. We both agree I can't move out of this state of unhappiness, nor can I move towards a decision about the marriage until I know everything. So basically, I could have saved $260 for the hour and a half. I'm just not as jaded as some, I guess, since my case is one where we really are happy together, and it may be that she is truly remorseful. Only time, and maybe the polygraph, will tell. I'm hoping a good old-fashioned talk will do it and see what my options are. Story 2. The baby is not mine. I've been lurking on here over the past year since my D-Day and finally felt the need to share my story. 1 year ago, today, at this point we had been married for 5 years with one son and another on the way. I was on our shared computer working on uploading some new pics of my son. We use my wife's account to manage all the pics. It's just easier that way. I noticed that there were a couple messages in the chat. She recently got a new phone and her messages was tied to her iCloud account, so if the computer was on, it was getting a copy of the messages. There were only a couple messages in there, but they were very strange. Good night sweetheart XOXO and few others of the same content. I immediately went into WTF mode and grabbed her phone. And sure enough, there were a bunch of others in there. But worse, pics and videos of him and his junk. I freaked out and was headed to the door, and she stopped me. I didn't even have to say anything. She knew what I had discovered. She came clean right there, about the relationship, about them sleeping together once 5 months prior. I kept going out the door. I called the OM up and left him a message and some text telling him I knew and to leave her alone or his entire company would get pictures of him from unflattering angles. She called him to, also to break it off. Later when I cooled down, we talked about the situation. I laid down some rules before even knowing how to handle it. No contact being the biggest. Well, second biggest, a paternity test would have to be done, since the timeline matched up with how far along she is. Now there is a safe test to measure paternity while pregnant. It's done by DNA and costs $2K. We did it, and I wasn't the father. Yay, my life just got even better. We did a brief stint in MC, but she took my wife's side on everything because she wanted to make sure the baby was safe. At the end of the day, I loved my wife, my son, and felt I could love the baby even if it wasn't mine. I decided to stand by her and try my best to make it work. I never threw it in her face and have trusted her as best I can. I still find myself checking up on her and what she is doing, but as near as I can tell, nothing has gone on since then. So, a year later, she is still not sure she made the right decision by not telling the OM about the baby and is struggling with that shame. I am taking a backseat to her emotional instability. I still love my family and am there for all of them, but her not committing to a path, whether it is us being together or not, is wearing on my heart and well-being. She is a great mother and person, and I do love her. I'm just not sure how much longer I can continue with this. Yes, the wife's a B for doing what she did. Yes, I am a ducking idiot for staying. I believed then I could deal with the not my child thing at that time, and I still do. When this went down, I did not think about myself but rather my son. To tear his life apart at 3 just did not seem right to me if I could avoid it. I grew up in a single-parent house. I went through all of that as a child. I did not want him to go through the same. If it means a bit my happiness to have a solid life for him, then it's worth it. But it is wishful thinking that seems to be going down the tubes. 2 years later, I first found out in April 2016 that my wife was having at least an emotional affair with her boss. Found texts and pictures on her phone. I confronted her and she had admitted to sleeping with her boss one time. She was also pregnant at the time, conception being in early December. The timing of the pregnancy and the affair lined up, and so I pressed for a prenatal test. The results came back and I was not the father of the baby. We talked and got what I thought was the truth, that it was a one-time thing, that it's over. Etc. Already having been together for 14 years at the time and already having another child from 2014. Which is definitely mine. I decided to give her another chance. I am also man enough to take on the responsibility of an innocent child who is not mine. It is not her fault and should have a chance at a good life. The other man had to move back to his hometown for work, so he would no longer physically be around, or so I thought. I read a ton of books and articles. I got my mind right, and tried to work on our relationship to make it stronger. I thought things were good again for the next few years. There were no signs of anything at all. I thought we had overcome this and were together. Then in September of this year, 2020, she was asleep in bed in front of her phone. It was still unlocked and open to the app. As I glanced at it, I noticed emails from the same OM as before. She had an email account I did not know about and only used a web browser to access it. There were emails between them going way back. I captured and forwarded a bunch before clicking on a wrong link and being logged out. But what I had was enough. I have been traveling a bit with the new job I started a year ago. And at least on the last few trips while I was overseas, the OM flew up to town and she went to his hotel room on several occasions. And he actually stayed in my house. And in my bed. He had even played with my kids at the playground, one of which is actually his. It was still early that night, so I called a friend who knew of the old stuff and he came and we drove for a bit and talked, then returned home. She was awake and knew I had seen it and forwarded those emails. She came clean, sort of. I get the usual been found out response. She dumped that email account after denying me access to it. Since then, I have been on a witch hunt, found a bit more information she did not clean up from other accounts that are still around and I know about. It seems the first time was not a one-time thing but at least a 6-month sex fest. Whenever she could sneak away, that they talked about him might being the father, etc. I now know why she kept in contact with him. She felt guilty about him being separate from his kid, and she still had feelings for this guy. So, I did not make any rash decisions when I found out this second time, as I didn't have all the facts yet. I have been using my time to collect everything I can. I am hanging around through the holidays for my kids. I have pieced together everything I can of what has happened. I am currently just going through the motions without any emotion. I am going to meet with a divorce lawyer in December to draw up all the paperwork and drop it on her ass in January. At this point I want to take everything from her and leave her with nothing, including the kids. I wanted to share my story, that of trying to be the best man I could, to love unconditionally, and for that to take advantage of comments. I understand where you're coming from when you say you'll wait till the holidays are over, but to me, that's a person saying, I'll quit next week. There's never a good time. Actually, that's not right. There's never a better time than right now. This applies to virtually everything. I wouldn't wait, but that's just me. The second thing I wanted to say is, with all due respect, why fight for custody over the child that isn't yours? I mean, I get that you likely love him, her, but the reality is that there's a very good chance your STBXW will wind up with the other man. Anyway, regardless of the character of those two people, the child would probably be better off with her biological parents. It's unlikely a court would give any kind of custody of this child to you. Anyway, never mind full. You need to let go of this other child. It's all well and good in your mind, but the reality is that when she is old enough to start asking questions, of which you will have the answer to, it will be unbelievably confusing to him, her, as to why they were raised by you. When my oldest stepson started asking questions about his bio dad when he was 8, he ended up going through a period of about 2 years where I wouldn't say rejected me, but he treated me like I was just a guy who happened to live in the same house. I didn't blame him, of course, but all the same, he felt like whatever love he had been giving me before then was a sort of betrayal of his real dad. His bio dad didn't want a regular relationship with him. He's seen him about twice a year since then, even though he lives close. And it took him 2 years to get out of the fantasy land of mom and dad are going to get back together and will be a real family. And this is a normal story. Yours would be anything but normal, especially if your STBXW and the OM wind up together. When she is old enough to ask questions, how do you answer them? You're with me because your mom and dad are awful people. Meanwhile they're living together, probably happily. Divorce your wife ASAP and get 50-50 custody of the child that is yours, provided she is. Of course. Because you never know. And go in with your life. Look, I get it. You wanted to do the right thing, and you got burned. That sucks. It's easy for any of us to sit here and say we wouldn't have done that. Honestly, most of us wouldn't. If my wife cheated and got pregnant by the other man, I'd be out of here so fast it wouldn't be funny. But I can't say for certain I'd have done the same thing with my ex-wife. I was a different person then and fully believed in unconditional love and all that. It's entirely possible I would have done the same thing as you. I fully admit I ignored the signs with my ex-wife, probably rug swept and otherwise didn't pay attention to what was going on. Long story short, you need to think of yourself and your future, not somebody else's child's. They won't be homeless or without parents, so you don't need to step up and do anything. As much as you care about this child's welfare, she is not your child to worry about. OP responds. She sees the writing is on the wall and is pulling out all the stops to try and keep me around. Constant bedroom time, wanting a third child. Just after posting this last night she woke me up at 4 a.m. She couldn't sleep. Says we should go to counseling together. Admits she can't live on her own with her crappy salary. That she could quit her job and go back to school full-time. I actually laugh in her face when she says these things. I'm glad I didn't make any rash decisions. I've been able to find a lot harder evidence around everything. Especially that she is a pathological liar, even to the other man to lure him and more. I'm hoping to use the info to turn the screws on her as much as possible. The state I live in has some strict guidelines around custody, and I am hoping I can use that to my advantage. Oh, and the OM is married, and always said he won't leave his wife. I wrote him to personally tell him what a chicken he is. Of course he did not respond. I plan on sharing everything with his wife and probably his job since this started in the office and he is her boss. He used business trips to be in town when I wasn't. Giving her up would be something I doubt I can do. I am listed as the birth father on record and have been that for her. I struggled at the time whether to put my name down or not. But I did, knowing what it meant. In this state there is really no way for the other man to even challenge it or even for me to give her up. The courts side solely on the child's well-being and not changing anything in their life. I just wanted to drop a quick update. I have requested a consultation with an attorney. That is now moving forward. I've also gone cold and indifferent to my WW over the past few days. And she has noticed. Hit me today with that she thinks it would be best if she moved out. My response was simply, if that is what you want to do. She did not like that at all. She then said she had to find a way to accommodate the kids. Oh no, the kids stay here. They will sleep in their own beds. You can go, but they are staying here. Fear set in and she quickly backtracked on it. Have to wait and see where this goes tonight when she gets home from work. Maybe it's time for her to leave the family. My comment. You guys like these 2 short stories? Is it always the easier route for the wife to move out? Sub and bell and stay tuned for the next love story.